Immigration is a hot button topic for a lot of Brexiteers, and Priti Patel, a particularly disgusting Brexiteer, is one of these people who seems to get triggered by it. Now, she was recently on LBC's show with Nick Ferrari, and this was repeated with Nigel Farage around the time he went down to the sea and yelled at it. And she's also been talking a lot with my MP, Natalie Elfrick. I have a lot of issues with Natalie Elfrick, considering her first vote was to strip people of their workers' rights, and that predominantly she's focused on immigration, and that seems to be it. But that is what this video is about. So they were saying, or Priti Patel was saying, that once we leave the EU, and she said in this show with Nick Ferrari that we're not extending the transition period, so we'll be gone by 2021. Once we leave the European Union, we can change the laws and make it harder for people to get in a boat and come here. There's a couple of issues with that, and I want to go through them in this video. First and foremost, we already have some of the toughest laws, immigration laws, in Europe. Now, we don't always use them to the full extent, but that has nothing to do with Europe. That's because we're quite lazy, and conservatives at their core don't want government doing things. That is conservatism at its core. They don't want government to do things, they think people should do them instead. That's why a lot of the laws that we have in place aren't actually followed through on. So leaving the EU does not give us the chance to increase or decrease any laws, to give or take. We've always had that ability, we just choose not to, and then the Conservatives pull a tactic they've been using for a long time and just blame someone else when something goes wrong. Case in point, coronavirus. They've blamed the NHS for using the PPE, that was mostly out of date. They blame the teachers for not wanting the children to be packed into classes. They've blamed care workers because we haven't been able to test all the people that we look after when the government haven't provided anyone anything to do this with. Back to Priti Patel. Now, they've said that they've stopped a number of illegal immigrants from coming here, and how they've done that is working closely with French authorities. This is true, and this is going to stop once we've left Europe. I will explain why. Again, using the current global crisis as a perfect example. When it was all kicking off, Matt Hancock, to his credit, which I don't say very often, to his credit, Matt Hancock wanted to go meet his European counterparts. Now, the reason for this is so that you're all on the same page. Someone has a good idea, okay, brilliant, we're going to go down that route. None of them would have suggested herd immunity, point fucking blank, but we could have learned a lot. Now, if Matt Hancock would have still not implemented any of those policies, well, that really just goes to show what kind of dipshit he is. But he wasn't given that option. Boris Johnson stopped him. Now, there's no reason to stop Matt Hancock in that situation. That has nothing to do with Brexit, it has nothing to do with the European Union. But what Ramonas, like myself, kept warning people about, the most extreme version of Brexit is we lose all contact with Europe. And that's what Boris Johnson was pushing for. The arrogant, petulant, pathetic little child folded his arms, had a sulk, and said no. Didn't work out too well for us, did it? So when we leave the European Union, well, we've already left, but when the transition period ends, we won't be exchanging information with Europe, because the pathetic Boris Johnson government will not allow that to happen. And that's one of our greatest attributes, the fact that we can have every intelligence agency across Europe all working together so that we know where criminals, known people traffickers and people smugglers are. That's how we managed to catch most of the people who are trafficking people to this country. Now, it was already exposed in another investigation that the numbers that the Brexit Party inflates aren't actually quite right, and it's not actually that easy smuggling people into Dover. Now, it does happen, it absolutely does happen, but not in the numbers that people like Priti Patel and sadly Natalie Elfrick seem to push. Natalie Elfrick, who seems to be more focused on illegal immigrants coming to Dover than actually opening Dover Hospital to help with the global crisis. The current system is that we speak and we talk to our European allies. Most of the human traffickers we catch in transit. At that point, one of two things happens. Mostly they're sent back to France, and then France deals with them. But rare occasions they do get here, and they're taken to a detainment centre in the UK. Now, I've worked in the one in Dover very briefly. It's not pleasant, to put it nicely. But we have it, and it is used. And while these people are in the detainment centre, that's when they're processed. And the government decides if they're just an illegal immigrant, which is very different to an asylum seeker. If they're an asylum seeker, if they're an illegal immigrant, it's this country looks better, I reckon I can go there and have a better life, so I'm off. An asylum seeker is, I need to leave where I am now because I'm gonna fucking die. That's the difference. Also, asylum seekers, if they're granted asylum in the UK, are not allowed to work. They're given out a little card to buy everything off. It's an incredibly strict budget that they live off of. It's shit, basically. It's shit. They buy the wrong brand of something, their card is terminated, and they can go weeks and weeks and weeks without their card being reinstated. If they're lucky. If it does get reinstated. Big difference. So the point of this video was to highlight the fact that we have a pretty damn good immigration policy as it is. And we do have one of the toughest in Europe. We have a pretty good border patrol system in general. Now, it's not funded because, again, conservative governments do not fund things like this. It goes against the very core of conservatism, which is the government shouldn't be doing stuff. My argument to that is, why the hell are we paying taxes if you're not going to do anything? But that's the system that we have. We are able to be so efficient because we actually talk with Europe. We are about to enter a stage where we stop communicating with our literal and figurative closest allies. And dipshits like Priti Patel, Nigel Farage, Nick Ferrari and Natalie Elfrick are still pushing this notion that immigration, that illegal immigration, will all magically disappear once we've left the European Union. It won't. The reality is the number of illegal immigrants who come to this country is not that high. And we have a very good system that will be less effective in the future because it depends on people sharing a very key skill that these people just do not have. That's intelligence.